Good afternoon and welcome to the Ninox webinar. It's filling up. I'm still seeing the numbers rising here. So we'll give people a little bit of more time to join the webinar and start in a couple of seconds or minutes. Let's see how fast it rises. So we have 360 registrations today and already 150 people in the audience. And it's rising. So if you find the time, maybe take a look at the chat and just say hello, state your country or city or whatever you like. So hello from Berlin.
Webinar.
Oh, wow.
Hello from everywhere.
It's always so exciting. So I see Belgium, USA, UK, Heidelberg, I guess that's Germany, Austria, England, UK, Norwich, nice, Los Angeles, Montreal, Munich, Berlin again, Zug, Prague, Portugal, UK, Brighton, UK, nice. South Africa even, Austria, France, nice. Brazil, Mississippi, USA, Essen, New York, Malta. From literally anywhere people are listening today. I think that's really inspiring and exciting. Bucharest, Netherlands again. Japan even, wow. What time is it in Japan right now? It's pretty late, I guess. Qatar and the Black Forest.
It's 11 in Japan, by the way, 11 p.m.
Cologne, US, Brazil. Okay, nice. A very, very warm welcome from my end. If you don't know me, I'm Frank, founder and CEO of Ninox, and it's my great pleasure to introduce you to some of the new stuff we have developed in the past couple of months and pushed out lately with the new Ninox release 3.3. 3.3 is not so much centered around a unique feature. It's more, or let's put it that way, we took it as an opportunity to compile a lot of stuff we have been developing in the past, some long-standing requests, some more recent requests, and combine them to a kind of feature release with multiple aspects. I think the best way to see 3.3 is that it adds a lot of options that are, well, interesting for more advanced use cases. And yeah, why don't we just dig into it right now? So I will share my screen, run you through a couple of the new features, and afterwards we will have some time to discuss questions, talk about issues that came up, anything like that. So in the second half, if you want to bring in your own voice, if you want to participate in the discussion, then please just raise your hand and we'll get you on the panel. So let me share my screen here, 1 second. So I hope you can see that. So the new release 3.3 brought to life, I guess, last week. And here we go with some of the new features. The first thing I want to show you is about backups. Backups on Linux Cloud. As you might know, we already have a lot of different layers of backup to ensure kind of the security of your data. And there are automated backups that are automatically generated as soon as you use the database and are completely managed by Ninox. There are backups you can create manually, and there's also as a last resort, so to speak, layers of backup on the infrastructure layer that are only accessible from our support team. So in this case, I want to talk about manual backups. And you might know you can create a manual backup with this option here. And you just go ahead. And this dialog now is a new kind of feature. And this dialog gives you options to control more tightly about what data actually ends up in the backup. So the first thing that will be ever included in the backup is the structure of your database. So all the tables you defined, all the field settings, all the print layouts, all that kind of defines the business logic of your database. And that will be backed up in any case. Obviously, normally you also want to include your data. And obviously, normally you also want to include your files. You can decide if you want to include comments. Comments are maybe not the most used feature in the Ninox database, but here's the option to control if comments go in or not. And finally, you can also control if the history of the database. So all the changes you made over the months or days or weeks you used the database shall be included. Why did we bring in this option here? Because the history can be quite extensive over time. And often if you want to transfer your database maybe to a new installation, or if you just want to have a snapshot of the most recent state, it does not make sense to put in all the data. So that's why we deactivated it by default, but you have control. You can include it, you don't need to. Not including all the other things can be also quite useful. For example, if you created a nice database and that's really useful for a certain use case, and you decide you want to distribute it or send it over to a friend, then you might not want to include your data. And that's what you can achieve with deactivating all those options here. So let's take a look. I just created a database from the invoice template, and I will generate now a backup without this data and just preserve the structure of the database. So in this case, I now get the backup here and I can immediately restore it. And we will see the original database includes all the data from our template, but the restore, where everything goes right, does not have data. So be careful about that option, but it can be quite useful from time to time. Let me delete this. And now I want to cover a different thing. It's about formula problems, tracing down problems when you have extensive databases with a lot of business logic that change over time. And I will take this invoice database and just take a look. Let's assume we have here a table of invoices, and we do have a table of customers. And let's assume that here is a field position. And maybe in my invoice, I want to directly see the position of the kind of the connected customer here. That's very easy to achieve with Ninox, right? You can create a formula and we can navigate from our invoice to the customer. Well, let me do this in a visual way. So I go here and go to my customer and I take the position field. And I'm going to save that. So in this case, you see now here is a marketing head, Lisa Wilson. So let's assume over time this database gets restructured and we decide we no longer have need for this position field. I'm just going to delete it. And maybe it's replaced by something else more complex. So obviously now we do have a problem because there's a formula in our database that referenced this position field, but it's no longer available. And in the past, it was a little bit hard to understand where those problems reside. But with the new feature we developed, it will be very easy to trace this down. So you already can see it here. This database is now, or this table invoice is now marked with with a exclamation mark, which guides me to the problem. I can track it further down and see directly on my form, here's a problem with that formula. It's only visible in admin mode, by the way. So I see here's a problem, and I can go here and fix that problem and maybe decide, okay, I do no longer want to see the position, but I want to see from the customer something different. Maybe the customer number. So that was maybe a stretch in terms of the business logic, but as you can see, this will now help you to quite directly see where problems are in your database definition. So let me get out of this here. So we covered backups, we covered formula problems, maybe another one on the invoices database. So we have seen that number formats are a pretty crucial thing, because our friends from Switzerland, for example, have different ideas about how to represent a number than our friends from the United States. And in Germany, it's even way different. So number formats are a quite localized thing, and Ninox traditionally automatically adapts to the user locale. But sometimes you want to have more control. And that's one of the new features we have now. You can just rely on Ninox, let's say, automatic detection of the number format, but you can also explicitly define it on a per field level. And I would just want to show it here on the total field. So with the number format, we now have options to explicitly define the decimal separator as well as the grouping separator. And I hope I get it right, but as I understand in Switzerland, and correct me, it's this way, maybe it's a different way, whatever you need will work. Okay, that's a too small number, so let's maybe increase a little bit the quantity here, even more. And now we're gonna see that the number format utilizes different grouping separators, and if you like, even different decimal separators. Than our normal fields. Oops, I got it wrong. Just wanted to show it in a different way. So we take this as the grouping separator, and maybe a comma as the decimal separator. And there we go. So more tight control if you need it. If you don't need it, Linux just works the way as it used to work. Next thing is about a little bit more automation. Let's assume in our invoice database, whenever an invoice is ready to be sent out to the customer, we want to inform controlling. So you all might know that this is something we can achieve with a change to our status field here, for example. So we can track down, and by the way, here we see a formula problem. So we can track down the change of our invoice status and send out an email. How would we do that? We go to our trigger after update and do something like that. Send email to, well, accounting@ninox.com. And we would have a subject, I guess. Invoice changed. And maybe some message here or some text. I think it's body. And hey, this invoice plus invoice number has changed. That will work. But obviously, it's not the best way for our team members from the accounting department, because they need now to open Ninox, enter the invoice number into the search field, find the invoice, see what's going on there. So why don't we just include directly a link to that invoice? And that's what we can do now with a very simple function. And that function is called URL of. So let me show it. I just enter this here, URL of this. So URL of gives me the address of an entity in Ninox. And what entity? This like the current entity. So I go here, call it URL, save changes, and you can see directly here on my form, I do have now an URL. And I could use that URL within any automation. Yeah, I can send it by email, I can send it to WhatsApp, whatever is required. In this case, let's just give it a try. We have an URL. We end up directly in a new browser at the same position as our original invoice has been. So I think that's a very tiny function, but it can add a lot of convenience to automations. The next thing I would like to cover is about working with references. And again, let me show it maybe on the invoice database because it's so convenient. The traditional approach how Ninox handles relationships between tables is you have the invoice and you have somewhere on that invoice a field to select the customer, yeah, to connect this invoice with the customer. And this field works in a very, well, useful way, I think, for a lot of use cases, because it gives you this huge pop-up. You can define literally any aspect here. You can say what information you want to see from the customer, for example. You can add columns. You can define the sorting so that the end user can find customers very easily. And if I would just look for Wilson, for example, it's very easy to use. But sometimes it's a little bit too much. Yeah, it's a little bit too dramatic, maybe. If you see the workflow, yeah, you just want to skip through it here with tabbing and enter your data, and then you need to go into this, in this new dialog, and it's very huge. So in some cases, it makes sense to render this option in a different way. And that's what we provide now with an additional field setting. And that field setting will control how to render the reference field. So we can show it as a pop-up. That's the normal behavior, but we can also switch to combo box. And in this case, I can just theoretically look for Wilson. So here's a problem. In order to use this combo box effectively, I need to set it up. I need to add some control over what data is actually shown here. But that's something you can tightly control in the old way. You basically just define what columns shall be reflected when entering this, when rendering this combo box. And I will just take the last name in this case to make it very easy. And as you, okay, small flicker, but now you see it. So now we have Wilson or we have Cooper directly at our fingertips. So that makes it, in certain use cases, much more easy to work with this relation field. I will show you now other options to display relations between tables, but I'll set up a new example for that. So let's call this demo. And let's assume quite similar case. We want to manage companies. And, well, the company name. And that's it for the moment. But we want to associate a company with a specific industry. So in that case, I would just set up a table for industries and give some fields here, industry, and we also make use of a color field. I'll show the purpose in a second. So what industries do we have? I won't enter anything here or all the industries, but let's assume we have agriculture, agriculture, and we have telecommunications, and then maybe we have chemicals, and maybe healthcare. So there we go. Healthcare might be, I don't know, what's the color of healthcare? Let's put it green, and chemicals could be like a pretty chemical color here. And that's gonna be blue, and oh, that should be green as well. So let's see. We can decide later about colors, but now we want to associate companies like Ninox and another company with an industry. So the traditional way to do that is obviously using a relation field. So I just link my company to an industry, and there we go. I can use now my solution and just select Ninox is, oops, that was not Ninox. Well, say ACME is on chemicals. So with the new field settings, I already showed you, you can render this in a different way and utilize a combo box. And here's one thing you could already notice, it's about the colors. So the combo box tries to automatically grasp more data from your table. And when you start to directly define what columns shall be used, you can also get control over it and say, let's take the industry kind of as the label, but also do respect the color. So there we go. And as you can see, just need to reopen it, and it's working now. So other options besides the combo box are the other options we already have on choice fields. And that's the beauty now. Can also say, hey, I only have a couple of industries. Yeah, why do I need this huge combo box control? Why don't I show the values directly? And that's what I can do with either a switch or also a radio buttons option. There's even a more advanced way that does not perfectly match the use case I'm showing you right now, but just to give you some outlook, you can also decide to completely embed this record into our current record. So this gives us direct control to the selected industry. You can still unlink it or link it back again. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense in this use case, but the radio buttons option, that's definitely very interesting. So that's about the new capabilities of the relation field. And you can already see that those lines between choices and relations start to blur, because with the new relation handling, it adds a lot of more dynamics to the end solution. Yeah, I can just enter new industries here, well, another industry. Where's my creativity? So I have another industry, and it's immediately available here on my form now. So it adds a lot of more dynamics. And if you really want to go beyond that, remember, with relations, you also have the option to define constraints. Yeah, you can say, don't show me all of the possible industries, but to show only the things that are relevant maybe to that company. Can't come up with a good example right now, so I will come up with a semi-good one. So let's say we only want to show industries where the industry name is somehow like the company name. That's something you could do. You see, no industry is like ACME, but if it would be chem, we would already get the chemicals option. So there's a lot of dynamics and a lot of flexibility you can gain from that feature. And we don't stop here. We added an even more dynamic type of control that gives also similar results with regards to the end users, but really opens up a lot of flexibility. And we call this dynamic choices. So the dynamic choices are, as some of you already figured out, not directly available here from this option, because we think it's a little bit more a feature for experienced users. That's why we have hidden them here in the edit field section, but you can still access them and add them to the table. I will create a new table here just to make sure that we don't obfuscate things. And I will call it dashboard. That's a pretty common pattern. We've seen more and more that people start to create dashboards with Ninox. And I think dynamic choices and dashboards are kind of a good match, because dynamic choices no longer require from you to relate data. You can just dynamically access data from anywhere in your database. So I will add a field here now. And I'll do quite similar thing. Let's do a simple choice. And I will do a select on the industry. So I want to have a choice field that takes its data from the industry table. But instead of linking it to the industry table, I will now, or with the dynamic choice field, I have now the capability to type in literally any Ninox scripting expression. And in this case, I want to do a select and just do a simple select on the industry table. And I want to order that by, I think the name was called industry, so that we have a nice, alphabetic ordering. And now Ninox needs to understand it has a set of data, but how shall I display it? And that's why we have those three options that give you control over what information is used as the label of the choice value, what information is used as the color, and even what information is used as the icon. And I will just take for the label the industry field, a normal text field. I will take for the color our color field. I don't have an icon field at the moment, but I could have one if I wanted. And there we go. You can see now quite similar behavior. Only difference is we didn't build up a relationship. Yeah, we don't need a relationship in order to represent this value here. And this can be now quite interestingly combined with another new feature that's also for very advanced use cases. And I want to introduce this by utilizing a yes/no field. And I will call this show more information. And this yes/no field, show more information, I want to have it displayed in a different way, maybe as a slider. And let's move that, oops. Let's move that to the top. And let's say we want to see the industry only if the user decides to show more information. Yeah, very well-known feature of Ninox. But here's the thing. You all might know the history of your record. If I switch this option, which brings up here more information, let's add a maybe even a headline here, info. Oops. So if I switch this on and off, it acts actually as a change on our database. Yeah, this gets stored on the backend of Ninox. This information, if I want to show or not, gets stored. And you can see that on the history. And if you have multiple people working within the same database, let's assume those are different users, can get pretty awkward if one user decides to hide that and the other user wanted to work with that information. Yeah, so it's not really multi-user capable. And that's why we decided, because we see this is a very common pattern in advanced databases, that's why we decided to give you the options to get more control and to add more dynamics to your database. And you can do that by defining how a field's data is actually stored. Normally, it gets stored on the database layer, but you can take a different definition of that or utilize a different binding of data. You can say, I want to have this just for the moment. I want to have this just on for this user on the memory in the browser. I don't want to store it. And now you will see that both users can work independently. And also, another nice side effect, my history no longer gets polluted by this unnecessary information. Yeah, it's really not helpful to see that. So it no longer gets polluted and it's really multi-user friendly now. So let's get one step further and combine these capabilities with our dynamic choice field. So I will add another field, and I've seen this also often. I will call it pre-filter industry, just to make it very clear. And I will decide, because this is more like a UI logic, I will decide to bind this to the browser's memory or session memory and move it before. And now I will utilize the advanced capabilities of this dynamic choice field and say, select industry where industry like our filter. Oops, sorry, I need to start this. So I take the value of our filter, have it on a local variable, use it to drill down my select query. And there we go now. And as you can see, right now I see all the values. But if I have this, you see only agriculture is available. And I think that gets even more immediate if I use a different setting for displaying this field. So if I go for radio buttons, for example, hope that works. Yeah, probably need to rearrange it a little bit to make it more user-friendly. But anyway, you can see the result. So it dynamically reacts on my changes, and I can store this now also on the browser memory. So it's really now reutilizing a normal text field as a super dynamic search field for our super dynamic choice field. And that's the very end of the presentation of the new features. There's a lot of more stuff in the box, tiny polishments and a lot of edges, can't cover all of them. But I really want to hand over now the discussion to the panel and to the audience. And if you have any question, please raise your hand and we will be able to invite you to the panel and discuss. Okay, I see already some risen hands. Aditya, can you give us some feedback from the chat, by the way? And
Yes.
just to introduce you, so today we have with us Aditya. Aditya is product manager at Ninox. So literally every issue that comes up in the usage of Ninox from our customers and users goes through your desk, Aditya. I mean, you're on the team now for 3 months or so, but I think you've already seen a lot. So can you give a summary of the chat?
Yeah, sure. So hello everybody, and thanks Frank for the introduction to everybody. And yeah, so about the chat, Frank, there have been questions about mainly related to the new features, of course, related to the dynamic fields and the URL of functions.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing and the foremost question that we have is about the database backup that we talked at the beginning, on which platforms that feature is available and how can they users access that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very fair question. So this feature is available for Ninox cloud databases, or let's put it that way, for Ninox local databases. I think you already had access to a similar type of setting, but this feature is explicitly for Ninox cloud databases that didn't expose this flexibility before. And you can access it either through the browser or through the Mac app or through the iPad app. Are there any other questions, Aditya, from the chat?
Yes, definitely there are, and I hope that answers the question. And if you still have any questions around it, just feel free to type that in the chat. And next question, oh, actually there are many, so I'll just pick one. Comes from Simon Ephick. He says, is it possible to make the dynamic value name in a dynamic choice field dynamic? Okay.
Well,
Using the case switch or if then structure.
yes, yes, definitely. It is. I can't come up with a nice use case for this, but let's see. So you could say, as you have control over, oh, sorry, that was not the dynamic choice field, the dashboard was it, right? So as you have control over what is utilized as the name, you can use literally any expression here. Yeah, you could say something like today. That does not make a lot of sense, but still it would work. And I'm sure you can come up with use cases that will make more sense.
Perfect. And let me pick the next question. And it is again related to dynamic choice, Frank. It comes from Philip. He says that if you create a function field as a set in text dynamic choice field, then it presents the ID. But if you take only dynamic choice field, then it presents the text. Okay. So basically the question is that if you set a function field that considers dynamic choice field as a text, then the value is presented as ID.
Ah, okay. Okay, interesting catch. So that would be something like we take our industry here. But you wanted to use the text of the industry. I'm not sure, Philip, if I got that right. We can also get you on the panel.
Yeah, let me add him.
Can you do that? So in this case, it looks like it's working.
Frank, I guess you will have to do it.
Oh, wow. Let me see. I see. Lots of users. For some reason, it doesn't show the risen hands. It only shows that there are hands risen. Ah, no. Okay, okay. Get in. Hi, Philip. Good to see you. How's it going?
Hello. Is it possible that I share my screen? I have a example.
I mean, if it's an issue, but let me ask: is this kind of the thing you wanted to achieve? Or?
Yeah, that's right. On my screen, it's different. If I put text, then it shows the ID and otherwise.
Okay, then let's put it that way. So it's supposed to work this way. You could maybe check your settings here with the value name and so on. If it's not working that way in your case, then let's get in touch on support. Then it seems to be an issue in your specific situation. But you're right, it should work just like that. You take the text of your dynamic choice field and get back the text you can see here.
Okay.
Okay, other questions, or I can also add Martin here to the panel. Hi, Martin.
Let me unmute then as well. It works here. Hi.
Hi.
I just posted in the Q&A actually. With the new functions of having the multiple choice fields or the dynamic choice fields, it can grow very big, and as you mentioned, or as well displayed already, it can create some issues in the form view. Is there any plan to have something like a vertical line break? Like there's a usual line break right now, but to have something in a vertical level so that you can have more or less 3 different lines on one form?
Ah, you mean like setting up multiple columns, because right now we are...
Yeah, exactly. Because, for example, if your industry is growing right now and you have then 30, like say, industries on your screen, the pre-filter industry on the left is going to the bottom, so it doesn't stay on the top.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're going, what you're going at, or where you're going at. So there's definitely ideas about kind of giving more control over the form while not losing too much of its simplicity. And but what we definitely see is that customers are asking for ways to group things or structure things. Yeah, even that feature I tried to simulate here is definitely something that could be or should be an actual control on the Ninox user interface. So that's something we are absolutely aware of.
All right, thanks.
Okay, cool. Then we have Andre. I'll get you on the panel, Andre. Hey, Andre. Andre, can you hear us? If not,
I'm sorry.
oh,
I was
hi.
muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. Crisp and clear.
Thank you. My question is not so much related to new features, but I don't know if the new features perhaps addressed or improved. I have 2 different computers, and for some reason, my database works wonderfully on, I haven't upgraded yet, but my database works wonderfully on the Ninox installed on one computer, but it on the other computer, it seems to be stuck in a limbo. It's most apparent when with the one on the computer where it functions fully. I've created new databases, and when I use a transport device to connect to the other computer, it doesn't recognize the new databases.
How do you sync your database? Is it with iCloud, or are you a registered user of Ninox Cloud?
I'm not syncing it using iCloud. Is that the solution?
Ah, wow. So yeah, you can, I can't show you right now on the screen, but basically when you're on the Ninox app, right?
Yes.
And probably it states here, my databases. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
You can, just like I click here on this option, or just long press the database, you can create a copy on this My Database section and say you want to store this database on iCloud, and then it will be automatically synced across all your devices.
Okay, I see. All right, so it's that simple, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty simple if you know how to do it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let me get Laurent on the panel. Laurent, can you hear us? I guess he's still connecting, but then David also asked to join the panel. I just get you in.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Laurent.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I have some questions, but I'm not sure it's linked to the new possibilities. It's a stupid question. When I group a column, I think there was a little icon that indicates that we have grouped the column. I'm not sure. You see, if you group.
Okay. Oh, Laurent, I guess you're right.
Oh, it disappears and it's very annoying.
Oh, wow, you're right.
Am I right? Yes.
Yes, I can see it. I can see it. It should be just like that here, right?
Yeah, right.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get 1 point.
Yes, you get 1 point extra, definitely.
Okay, another thing, it's another question. I have an iPad 4, you know, it's old.
Oh.
iPad 4, and I think I cannot open my database on that model that has, I think, 1 gigabyte of RAM, but I'm not sure. Can you confirm the...
Yes, that could be the case. To be honest, I'm not super sure about the specific iPad models, but we do have minimum system requirements regarding the operating system, and that's been bumped to iOS 13. So iOS 13 is still supported on a pretty broad range of models, but not the oldest iPad. So I'm not sure about iPad 4. It's something we can figure out, and if you just drop a note to support, they will be able to help you. Okay,
thanks. That's all for now, but the new possibilities are great. I mean, the multi-choice and everything, it's opening plenty of possibilities. It's great.
Thank you
job.
So much. Glad to hear. Yeah. Okay, let's get Milan on the panel. Also raising the hand here. And while we're at it, I'll also, Milan, hi.
Hi. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, we have in 14 days a really big presentation in Czech Republic together with Integromat.
Oh, wow.
And we would like to use the Ninox to present, and that's my question concerning the dynamic choice field. If I send the information through Integromat, do I pull the ID of the choice, or it's enough, let's say, the same label, if the label matches?
Yes, so then that's a very good question, by the way, and we didn't cover that. So the way how the dynamic choices are stored internally, yeah, that's the main question, is based on the ID of the value. Yeah, so we can even see it on our dashboard where we have this industry selection here. If I would go to a very, well, maybe not so often used formula, you see here raw basically gives us the internal representation, and it's actually stored as a number. So it's the ID of the choice.
Okay. Okay, we will have to find it, how to do it. Okay,
so
thank you very much.
What's your use case? You want to send in information with Integromat?
We want to send in informations because we have, let's say, about 30 scenarios, which we fill from different sources from outside. And in the middle, we use Google Sheets, but we completely replace it by Ninox. And let's middleware for all the scenarios and integrations. And it would be really, really great if we, let's say, could send the name of the project, let's say, not the ID, but the name of a project which matches through all the systems we are using. We have together at the moment with 12 systems around the world, and let's say the unique ID, a name of project.
Yeah, so that's definitely possible. It's a little bit too complex to cover now in this webinar, but it's definitely possible. Yeah. So if you get in touch with support, they will be able to guide you in a direction that allows you to do that. Yeah.
Okay,
so
great.
You want to look up the whatever data it is, but you want to look it up by the name of the project, for example.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I think we have a couple of minutes left. So
hey Frank,
is there, yeah?
Can I ask a couple more questions?
Sure.
Regarding to the URL of function, the URL of parenthesis this does not return the full URL that's in my browser. So I cannot compare and I cannot check what tab and what view I'm in.
Well, the URL of function should give you something that's quite similar to what you can see here. Yeah. So we was, I think 2 releases ago, we introduced this URL structure of Ninox, and you basically see it's going to a team with this cryptic team ID. It's going to a database with this cryptic database ID. It's going to a module thing table, yeah, and actually then a record in that table. So it's all a little bit technical, but URL of should give you exactly that address. And
yeah, can you type it in URL of this? And if you stretch it out, then we're gonna see the difference. So in this case, you can see at the end, it says module A, view default. If you check your browser, in the browser, you have the view ID. And after the A1, you have the actual tab ID as well.
I think I can help here. My name is Yoav. I was the one who have written the whole of your deep linking URLs at Ninox and also this particular formula. the formula produces a sort of the simplest link it can. If you want to extend, you can add to this formula comma with a table name, sorry, view name and a tab name. So if you would say table 1 or all for this example.
So let's add another view to make it more explicit.
But over there, you are asking for one specific table and view. How do you check what table and view are you in?
So it does take the right table. It just doesn't take the view and doesn't take the row. So the table is being checked. But it might be a good idea to have sort of automatically know which tab and view you're in. So it might be a good way to think about that.
Yeah, but over here you are specifying exactly what table and what view ID you are trying to get. But I'm not trying to get the one that I'm specifying. I'm trying to get it dynamically, that what is the actual table ID that I'm in.
David, I think I understand what you mean. So in this case, we explicitly define where we need to go, and that will just work fine. But if you want to have it absolutely dynamic, there's not really a way to extract that information out of Ninox right now. So you can't ask, where am I? But I guess that's something we could put as a ticket, Aditya, right? Or you off?
So in my opinion, it makes a lot of sense to have it. We are kind of putting it out there, and the way you guys use it, we want it to fit your needs. So if you want it that way, we'll definitely try to make it work.
Yeah, so I'm just asking that, could we just copy the actual exact URL that's in the browser with the URL of this function?
So this cannot happen, because then all of the rows would just have the same URL, right? If you do just URL of this, everything would just be the same URL.
Yeah, that's
shouldn't be, because you're in a different record. So it would say node A2, it would say node A1, and it does over here. So if you're in one record, it should trigger at that moment.
If you want to get the current URL where you're looking at now, then this is not your function. This function provides you a URL based on a row.
Yeah, but I think the need is understood, David, and we definitely make a change request for that. So to give you also this flexibility.
Okay, and my other question would be, what is the difference between binding something to my browser or binding something, a record to the browser as well? So if you go in and click one of the fields, the company name, for example,
I will show the difference. So I will add here a very simple yes, no field. I will call it checked, and I will also represent it as a slider to make it a little bit more quick. And I will show it here on the view. Yeah, and this is just the normal behavior of Ninox, you see. And every other user going to the same table will have the same information, right? Because it's stored on the database layer. So the new option can give you the option to not store it, basically. Yeah, we don't store it, we just keep it on either in two ways.
I understand the difference between the server and the browser, but what is the difference between browser and the other browser per record?
Yeah, so here you see, this is the option I showed before in memory, global variable in memory.
Yeah.
So here you see, it's the same for both records. And for the other user, it's different.
Yes.
Yeah. So I can switch it and I go through my records and it's always the same. It's global. I can also state I want to have it on memory, but it shall be a little bit more like the normal behavior, stored per record, but not on the database. Yeah. So in this case, I can say cam I checked, Ninox not, cam is checked, Ninox not, and now Ninox as well. Yeah, and for this user, it can be different. Cam, Ninox not. When I reload, the information is gone, basically. Yeah, that's the difference. You either have it globally so it's just one place in memory for the whole database, or it's different per record, but still not really stored on the database there.
So if I'm binding it to the record only, then if I even refresh the record, that would go back to the default setting.
Exactly. So in terms of timing, we are already 2 minutes behind schedule. It was really nice to meet all you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Would love to spend more time, but this is it for the new release 3.3. If there's any question open, and I guess there's a lot of questions open, please get in touch with us. We want to help you as quick and as efficient as possible to make use of the new features. Thanks for your time. It was really nice to meet all you guys, and have a great day. Bye then.